Hey everybody, so today we want to talk about warm-ups specifically as they relate to competition. We have competition coming up in roughly a month and a half, so we figured that this would be really important for you guys as coaches and jumpers to establish the warm-up that you're going to use for competition. So when you're thinking about competition warm-ups, you want to do your best to have it as similar as possible to the warm-up that you do in practice every day. That's just really helpful to kind of have a sense of normalcy or something that is standardized, that your kids can go to competition and they have something that they know and that they're used to doing, versus just having the entire day be something, new and scary. They have this one piece that is completely identical to what they've been doing at practice.
Yeah, and with that, you want to make sure that it's simple as well, because if it's super complex when you get into a competition, you don't want to have your athletes have to think about too much besides what they're having to do on the floor at that particular moment. So when you're in the back, just make sure that you have maybe one or two team captains that can lead a warm-up that's pretty simple, it's pretty self-explanatory, that you can do without your coach around. And then from there, once they get warmed up, they can move on to their events and actually get warmed up with each event as well.
Cool, so that general warm-up, again, you want it as close as possible to what you're actually doing at practice, which means now is the time to make sure that you start and you have that set warm-up, and try to do it at every practice so that your kids get used to it and they almost memorize it themselves. So what I'm going to do really quickly is just take you through an explanation of what I typically would do. Now keep in mind, I practice by myself, so it might be a little bit different than what you would see in a team setting, but just to give you a general idea, this is what I typically do. I love music, so I'm gonna pick a song, and I usually jump to one or two songs in the very beginning, and it's all just single bounce and double unders. So I'll literally just kind of do whatever here, go under my leg, wrap, turn, all that kind of fun stuff, for, again, at least one, sometimes two songs, just depending on the day and how much I need to warm up. After that, I will go ahead and stretch out just a little bit because my muscles are warm, so I'll typically go for hamstring walks. That's just, you're gonna walk across the gym, touch your toe here, take a couple of steps, touch the opposite toe. You hold each one for a couple of seconds and you keep moving. That's a dynamic hamstring stretch. After that, I'll do the same concept, but getting quads, so I'm pulling back, moving across the floor, pulling back, etc., etc. All the major muscle groups, dynamic stretching there. And then the only thing that I'll static stretch or actually hold for a long time is my hip flexors. So for that, you kind of get into a really deep lunge, like so. So really deep lunge here. You're trying to keep this back leg straight and sink down into your hips in order to stretch that hip flexor. So again, everything else is really dynamic, moving through ranges of motion. The hip flexors are gonna be held or statically stretched. After that, I'll kind of get into some more intense jumping. I usually do some frogs and push-ups, some TJ burpees. We've demonstrated those in the past. Things like that, just to kind of get my heart rate up and get those major muscle groups really active. And then finally, after that, I'll go into some more specific stuff. And by the way, all of this so far has been with a beaded rope. When I get into more specific freestyle jumping, I'll transition into the rope that I actually use, so it's a licorice. I'll pick a rope manipulation sequence in one of my routines, and I'll do that at least 3 times, and then pick one more difficult sequence from a routine, either multiples or a power sequence, and run through that at least once. By that point, I'm usually sweating, I'm good to go, I can pretty much do whatever you need me to do at that point. But that's a typical warm-up for me, and that's what I'll probably be doing at competition as well. Nick, why don't you tell us what you do for a typical warm-up?
Backflips.
He really just walks in the gym and he's ready. It's really, really, really frustrating for those of us that have to warm up forever in a day to be able to do anything. But yeah, we both do a pretty good job of warming up in all reality, especially when I'm with them, I make them warm up. But again, super important, just go ahead and do your best to establish a warm up that you do at practice right now so that your kids are used to it and they're able to just walk into the gym and do it at competition.
Kaylee did a great job of taking us through a general warm-up for freestyle. I want to talk about the individual events like single rope freestyle, double dutch freestyles, and how you can warm up for those. And my recommendation is trying to warm up different sequences. So maybe your multiples, your power, your rope manipulation. You do those once, twice, maybe 3 times, sync a couple of them together. And if you want, maybe do the whole thing once or twice, but don't do it 3, 4, 5 times because you're gonna be exhausted. Coaches, when you're looking for this type of stuff, when your athletes get excited or nervous or whatever because competition is right around the corner and they're there, they're going to do the routine over and over and over. Slow them down, tell them to do just a few sequences, maybe run it once or twice, but that's all they need. Also keep in mind that in the heat of competition, you might have heats that are pretty close together. So you could be heat 97 for something and have to turn around and be heat, I don't know, 103. And so by the time you get off the floor, you're gonna have to warm up really fast. So maybe in the back, try to help your athletes to keep that stuff in mind and warm up both events. So go ahead and warm up a double dutch singles and warm up a double dutch pairs. So once they get done with that routine on the floor, they can come right back, maybe warm up 1 or 2 more things for that next event, and they're already ready to go, as opposed to being stressed, being anxious, and trying to get it all done in that maybe 5 or 10 minute window. So I would say as you are practicing now, go ahead and start preparing for that. You know, give yourself a 10 or 15 minute window. Go ahead and have them warm up their individual sequences now, and then maybe go out there and actually perform the routine. And then maybe give them a short window of 5 or 10 minutes to get the next routine done so they can get used to doing it with a lot of time in between and a short amount of time, but either way you're preparing them for competition. We hope that these general tips for warming up for freestyle will come in handy for you. We know that competition is about 5-6 weeks away, and we hope that you're able to take some of these, use them in practice now, and then once you get to competition, everything feels normal. You can keep going with that and have a successful competition.